Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Steven Spielberg's Jaws in 1975. So yes, here we are with Jaws here, Blu-ray here, and yes, my next Spielberg to review. And it's been a few weeks, I believe, since I reviewed a Spielberg. It was Tintin and Schindler's List, the last ones I'd done, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yes, this film, of course, is pretty much one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic Spielberg film. Certainly just one of the most popular films of all time. Although weirdly, actually, it doesn't have quite as high a score as I thought it would on IMDb and stuff. But it really is a loved film, and certainly for most people, the first of many things, Spielberg masterpiece. Most would say actually. I've not seen Jaws, which is not an official cinema film or anything. That's made for TV, I believe, and Sugarland Express. That's not that popular really, but this one, of course, is, and quite often actually named as one of the top 10. Certainly, quite often top 50 films of all time. And yes, of course, this is going to be a spoilers review, but I guess most people have seen the film. But I will say that it is a spoilers review, and yes, of course, another spoiler. I love the film. I'm not going to kind of build this up because Jaws really is just a perfect film for me, and just an absolute masterpiece. No doubt for me, one of the finest films ever made, and it really is one of the best films. One of the films I've seen the most. I've certainly I associate this with so many different things, and it is kind of the first summer blockbuster, as as most summer blockbusters are. The definition, you could say, of this. Of course, there was kind of blockbusters before this, no doubt, including the Bond films, especially Goldfinger onwards. But and the franchises and stuff, and this kind of thing. But really, in the sense that most people mean it, summer blockbuster, Jaws really is the definition, the kind of original, defining, kind of film in this vein. And of course, I believe it is in the top 10 highest grossing films, and it just one of the most popular. The critics, there's no denying this is one of the best films personally for me, and it's very hard to estimate how many times I've seen this film. All the way through, I can say certainly many times, more than 50 times, and it's, of course, it's one of the films that's kind of on all the time, and as a kid, just the amount of times that I saw this, and I kind of associate this with just the summer. Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be watched in the summer, although for me it really is the best time to watch the film. Of course, that's kind of why I waited, a few months, to make Jaws one of these films, Spielberg's, that I actually watch again and review it, in the summer months. And yes, just it really is enhanced, in this way, and just the amount of times, my memories as a kid, is one of these films that I just kind of think, when I think summer, and certainly summer as a kid, I think of Jaws, going to the beach and everything, but really, I think more of the beach, beaches in Jaws, than actually, going to the beach, because I was kind of, as well as a kid, sort of staying watching films, of course, more than actually kind of going out and stuff. But yes, this film, of course, is in the town of Amity Island. It's this small community, as we know, and yes, Amity Island, the small island here, quite cut off, quite isolated, and yes, shark attacks, of course, from this great white, and yes, the opening scene, and just again, really disturbing for me, this opening scene. I really do get disturbed by this film. I know a lot of people don't, but it really is quite in the way it's presented cinematically, very visceral, like a real raw feeling, this film, and it just all the attacks in the film, especially the first one, and wow, the one with Quint, that is one of the most brutal, shocking deaths in cinema. Really brutal there, and very sad. But the opening one as well, there's something about it, the fact it's not quite in daytime, that's very disturbing. What a way to set this up. For me, this is the closest Spielberg got to a kind of Hitchcock film. It's the kind of most similar, for example, The Birds or Psycho and stuff. Just the way it's made, the way it's shot, and of course, yeah, as we know, pretty much his only horror film. And of course you can debate about whether he pretty much directed Poltergeist, or at least co-directed it, and but official directed films. This is really the only horror film he's made, and it really is one of the. If you're counting as a horror, I know some people just call it thriller. I'm kind of it's kind of in between. It's more of a thriller, of course, for me than a horror. But when I do count it as a horror for the sake of lists and stuff, for the record, it is pretty much in my top five horror films. I think it's just far better than most, and it really is just one of my 150 favorite films. There is so much in this film that I just love so much. I love everything about the film. It's just flawless, and this is really, really the work of a genius here, and very, very bold film to make. Very, very risky for a number of reasons. As I've said in quite a few reviews, I think just the word fundable from the Bond series, where when you film things underwater and stuff, or around the water, it can lead to some flat moments in film. I think in cinema it's very, very hard to kind of perfect a film that's based around, or in kind of on the water kind of thing. And this film, for me, is one of the perfect films, in that sense. And the way that there's so much production kind of difficulties here. It must have been so hard, but it does not translate to the screen because this is seamlessly directed, not a single flaw. The production across the board is absolutely flawless, and this is just one of the purest representations, kind of fear. This film really, to sum it up, the main theme of the film, is man versus nature, but really just fear, and in that sense, just representing horrors, what they can do. And this is one of the best representations of that. The way it translates to the screen, through the way it's presented cinematically. Of course, the soundtrack, scored by the legendary John Williams. This is just one of his best. Not quite top five, I wouldn't say, but and it's not kind of like a kind of emotional, really, his score, but it is pure perfection. The way it's just used within the film to create tension, and just the way it builds and builds as the tension mounts. This is just literally one of the definitions of the way that can aid or work in harmony with the way you're shooting a film, and the way you're building sequences, and it has actually got a sense of wonder as well when they go out to sea and stuff. I love the moments as well in the score here. I think I included this in my top 10 horror film soundtracks. So yes, I talked about it then, but the score is just something else. And while it's not one of his top five ones, the John Williams score here is one of the best scores in cinema, certainly among them. And wow, this is just an epic film, and it's so. I think this is perfect setup. You've got Chief Brody, as we know, Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider. He is absolutely just one of the best characters in a film, really, and you've got just a perfect performance from him. So likable, relatable, but someone who's quite serious as well. And of course, he's the one that fights for getting the beaches closed and everything, and actually to initially seek out this shark, to actually get someone, kind of team together, hire someone at least to kind of take this down after the initial attack. He's the one who becomes obsessed. That's another theme, really, obsession. All these themes really that can be seen in a lot of Hitchcock films. And yes, I think it's very much like a Hitchcock film, very Hitchcockian. And of course you've got linking that to Vertigo, you've got the dolly zoom, one of the greatest moments of just pure cinema ever. It really is. I just get shivers every time that happens. It really is just an epic moment, and how much it's in relation to character realizations or moments. This is how you do it. It's not a gimmick, and it's only one time it happens in the film, and it really, it's iconic for a reason. It stands out, as one of the kind of most famous, shots in cinema. It really is just masterful. The way that Spielberg directs this film and shoots this film, it is nothing short of genius. It really is something else. Never a single moment, where it doesn't just add as well to these characters, the development, the way the shark is presented as well. It's all kind of shot in perfect ways. For the dialogue scenes, and of course the way, of course, yes, yeah, he didn't want to show. There was problems with the shark, the actual, mechanical shark, but it did in the end, as we know, lead to a better film anyway. Because the less he showed of it, I think it just added to the early on the tension and the sense of the fear of the unknown, which is one of the themes of the film, and it kind of just built it up more and more, and then it was shown a lot more in the second half of the film, which is just perfect. It really, really is. You've got this. You've got talking about the shark. You've got the exposition, but in many ways it's kind of a MacGuffin as well. The shark in a weird way, although it is a big focus of the film. But it's more just kind of used to kind of explore man versus nature, and just in general fear, paranoia, obsession and stuff. And really, there's a lot going on in this film as well. There's kind of present in a lot of Spielberg films. Kind of lies, you could say, through the media, but and the mayor in this film, of course, Murray Hamilton, Larry, he's kind of trying to cover this up, and kind of trying to lie to the public in essence, kind of pass over things in order to kind of keep up the reputation of the town, and to kind of allow the revenue to keep coming, kind of thing, and just to keep the image in many ways, and it's something that is present in this kind of covering things up, in general the government and stuff, or figures, in a lot of Spielberg, Close Encounters, E.T. and stuff. And yes, I think in this film it's just so perfect in the way we kind of, he's not really the villain, at all, but he's someone who at times you love to hate, if you will, but actually, eventually, it's kind of when he finally gives in, kind of thing. He is actually presented in a human way, I think, underlying, and he kind of, you can relate to him as well. I think it's just a great character actually, and just when he mentions, and stuff where he says, it was his kids as well on the beach, that's the key moment there. But I just think the actual initial, the teaming up, the coming together of these three main characters, of course, with Richard Dreyfuss playing Cooper, and you've got Quint in the film, one of the most iconic, played by the legendary Robert Shaw. He is absolutely amazing in this film. My favourite character is Cooper. It's hard to to have a character more likeable than someone who, when Richard Dreyfuss was in this and Close Encounters, he is hard to kind of top, just for likability as well, and I think he's just so good in the film. And this initial kind of classic kind of, you've got all the elements here of a traditional kind of what you need really, to kind of create mystery, and to get a kind of a clash of ideals going around something that's happening and needs to be stopped. And this is present throughout most of the first half, and finally people give in, and most of the second half, at least an hour and 7 minutes or so into the film, they go off on the boat, and yes, the rest of the film is them trying to take, the three main characters trying to take the shark down, and they have a boat, the Orca, and yes, it really is just so epic, kind of an adventure film as well. It's got all the elements here that just makes a perfect film, and I think just the way that Spielberg elevates every single moment of tension, the way that all these characters, compared to so many, horror films, if you will, the characters are just some of the very, very best. Let's face it, a lot of horror films don't always have, not every horror film, of course, some have some of the best characters, but a lot of horrors and most horrors do not have usually great characters. But these, as we know, are kind of some of the best. Quite a few of these characters. So it's just generally, it's films like this where it's kind of it's weird to describe it as a horror because it just exceeds basically every single film in the genre, and in terms of the depth to the characters, just the way the film's made, the sophistication to it, but and the way it's so masterfully edited, this is genius stuff. Juxtapositions of many shots here, and as well, I love as well the kind of the bits where it zooms in between people passing, the kind of eye line between Brody and when he's looking, of course, it's quite early on, but it's people walking by frantically, and he's trying to focus on the sea and if anything's happening, and it's very, very intense. And I think just the way that Spielberg edits at the right moments here, to make it seem like he's kind of not editing. This is the thing. It's just so subtle at times, and so seamless the way this film is made. That it just is so immersive, and he's using all the tools that he could, just to make a masterpiece, of cinema. Just purely, this is pure cinema. He understands what, kind of, and this is very impressive, for pretty much his second feature film official, to just make an absolute masterpiece here. He knows what is essential for cinema, and it goes beyond so many films, most films really, in cinema, and it's just a marvel to behold. It really, really is. And I think, yes, just this whole first hour is perfect cinema. It's so immersive. There's a charm to it, of course, a humour to the film, which I love. Between the characters, it's just so believable. These characters, how they kind of, the clash of ideals, and their opinions on everything, and all these kind of different characters. You could say side characters. His family. I love Lorraine in the film. She's great. So good in this film. And yes, you have Mary Hamilton as well, who's great. I love the kind of the real charm with the family scenes when they're there as well. It's not for something that's as big a theme in this film as say Close Encounters or E.T. and stuff, or Jurassic Park, but it is certainly there. And this is the thing. This film's got so many elements as well that kind of present throughout most of Spielberg's at least 20th century work. It's a bit different in the last couple of decades, but certainly most of his work here, the themes that are present, in terms of family and everything as well, it's all here, and it just really is. I can certainly understand how this could be someone's favourite Spielberg. It's just so perfect, and this first hour, so good. It's just so investing. There's a sense of wonder to it. When the attacks do happen, they are so masterfully executed. You've got the moments where you think something's going to happen as well, and then kind of it plays with you. Spielberg plays here, and then when something does happen, it's kind of just shocking. This whole narrative, it's one of the strongest in cinema, and there is quite a lot of emotion to the film as well. Very rare, in this way, in a horror film as well. I think the depth to this, and just the overall, the kind of the sad nature as well. Even just of kind of general characters, side characters and stuff. The deaths in the film, it's very, very shocking in the way it's done. There's not too many. It's not overdone, and when it does happen, when you have got the deaths, they're so well built up, and they're so kind of tragic the way they're presented, and very, very disturbing. This film, if this film is trying to achieve bringing fear to the cinema, it really perfects it, certainly, and of course it is. That's what it's doing. To sum it up, it really is a film about fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of nature in a way, of course. A lot of the characters, throughout the film, don't really know too much about the shark, and many characters are just kind of, very confused and everything. And then you've got this character of Cooper coming in about half an hour into the film, and of course he is, he researches these, sharks and everything. Such a great character. He is so good in this film, and the chemistry between him and Roy Scheider, and of course, yes, Robert Shaw in particular, is just so good. And in the end, these characters, in the second half, I love how they become, kind of this bond they share, and they become friends, of course, and even more kind of tragic when Quint dies. That's something as well. Shortly before his death, you get this kind of masterful, really kind of deep and genius kind of exposition. When he's telling things about the war and stuff, and then I think it just makes it more and more sad. Every time I watch it, it's just when I realise how this character, is so much depth to him, and how he did come close to death many times, but and then he gets the most brutal death in the film. He really does. When that shark bites into him, it's a film that really disturbs me, and it's really hard. Very very visceral. This, I'm always shocked at how how brutal this is. This death, you cannot call this, kind of this is anything but tame. This is truly, truly, terrifying stuff. This death, and it's very prolonged. Really, really prolonged death here, and just the agony and everything is just so believable, like it's actually happening, and very, very, very sad. And that's the thing. These characters make the film as well. It's the ones that you root for. And of course, because you go through this so much kind of build up, and getting behind the characters, the struggle to get team, behind, going after the shark. How, of course, the shark is, dangerous, and these main characters do as well. And of course, the struggle to eventually get the team, together. And it's just a shame that, of course, Quint dies. But then it's also really, really uplifting, and just a magical ending. I really love the ending. It's not, a big, big kind of operatic sequence like E.T. or something. And it's not one of his very, very best endings, but it's really nice and subtle. Really a perfect ending. I love how they just kind of swim to shore. It's just a great kind of classic ending. And then it's a bit of humor in there as well, just before the credits and stuff. And it's just a perfect film. It really is just one of the greatest films ever made. It really, really is, and certainly in my top 150 of all time. I just love how, kind of in general, how, as I've said, how sophisticated this film is, and how kind of suggestive it is, at times. You never see the shark really until quite late in the film, and these point of view shots from the shark's perspective, underwater and everything. It really, really is a scary film in so many ways, and the way it kind of just really digs, into you, kind of gets under your skin, and so immersive, and of course it makes it even more kind of relatable and everything, and kind of more on edge. The fact that this character, of Martin Brody, Chief Brody, is afraid of water, and he's comes from a different area. He's not from the island as well, and it's just so genius. All these ideas that come together, and the way this shark in general, is presented throughout the film. Not just when he does come up, the effects are so perfect, I think, as well. But the way it's so suggestive, and the way it kind of the suspense is so kind of geniusly done. It really, really is. It's just so kind of really gets into this idea of fear so perfectly, and this obsession as well. In a kind of a humorous way as well, you could say. So it's just more grounded as well. And I'm so glad. I think initially the way the production was going, it was maybe going to be more serious than what it is. In the end, and I think Spielberg wanted to go for more of a lighter tone at times. And of course, I think the humor in the film, especially when they're on the boat as well. Their scenes when of course they're kind of singing and stuff. It just really makes a very perfect blend of comedy and just horror as well, and thriller aspects. So it's not wholly kind of serious in many ways, but it really is one of the most effective films in portraying fear, and it's certainly for me a scary film. And I'm not exactly too great in the water and stuff, so it's kind of something that really plays into the fears, in my opinion. And it really is in general, in terms of just it's a simple premise, very, very simple plot, but it's very multi-layered, this film. And I think it's a blockbuster and everything, but it's so genius in the way that these characters are so deep, and all these kind of ideas are so masterfully interwoven, and it just is a masterpiece in every sense. I love as well how the kind of the colours are used in the film, and as well Spielberg chose a lot of the characters not to kind of wear too much red clothing, or red is not a colour in the film that's used too much. And I think basically that was to heighten the effect of when there is blood in the film, of course, with the attacks, so it kind of stands out more, and it's kind of more shocking. So every single thing is so well thought out in this film, and the editing is just top-notch editing, top of the class as always with Spielberg. This really is a true masterpiece, and I think it's so charming. It's a magical experience. Just the Spielberg magic, not in the way that kind of Indiana Jones films are, or kind of E.T. and stuff, but certainly it has the Spielberg magic. And it's got a lot of the as I say, a lot of the themes or kind of traits of a lot of Spielberg films, and it just I can certainly understand, as I say, how it is quite a few people's favorite Spielberg film, because it just is. It really is a flawless film, and it's just one of the very, very best. I love this film. It's so immersive. As I say, the way it immerses you in these characters, how believable and masterfully built up. This the questioning of the attacks. And how you've got the perfect kind of the character dynamics. You've got kind of within the three characters, you've got kind of science versus kind of typical kind of there's a kind of simplicity and stuff to Quint, and the kind of just getting it killed kind of thing and hunting this down. In the way that you've got the kind of you've got that, and then you've got the character played by Richard Dreyfuss, of Cooper, and he's kind of this the kind of more science involved here. The one who he really is researching into this and trying to be clever about this. But then you've got this clash, and it's so fun. This plays a part in the kind of the bickering and the eventual kind of friendship that they have, even though they have different approaches to this. And you've got the guy in the middle, of course, Brody, who is kind of very, very hesitant, of course, of many things. In the sense that he's very, he fears the water and everything. And but then in the end, he's the one who, ironically, kills the shark, and he's kind of like the hero of the film. But I think Richard Dreyfuss plays my favourite character. But there was not a single bad character in the film. This is just it's so enjoyable. The charm to the film. The music, of course. It's something you can just listen to as well separately. But of course, no one. I guess no one's kind of doesn't know the theme to Jaws. It's so famous, so iconic, of course. Very, very simple, but often the best scores are in this sense, and the way it's used to mount the tension up, and to really just make this an immersive experience. And the psychology of this film, the way it kind of truly disturbs, in my opinion, and just the way it shows chaos as well, and of course just isolation. The way this community, Amity Island, is kind of very, very it's quite cut off and everything. And I think the way that this the shark kind of disturbs this as well, it's very interesting, and kind of I think because the peaceful nature of of the community and stuff, and the way it kind of comes in here, it's just much more effective. The fact it's an isolated island in many ways, and it's portrayed as well through these characters like the mayor and stuff. But I think it's just brilliant how he kind of Spielberg really shows him the way he lies and stuff, and covers it up, this character in particular. And it's just, as I say, so much going on in this film. It's not just a kind of a horror film, but everything in this film is masterfully done. It's just how you make a film, how you make a true thriller horror, and you've got some of the best characters in cinema. You've got moments of showing the family life, and in general communities, and then you've got this adventure feel. It has kind of action scenes at the end. It's got everything, this film. And of course, yes, it gets full marks, of course. No doubt. I'm not gonna say otherwise. This is one of my very, very favourite films. It's not quite in my top 100, and doesn't quite, personally get the tier 1 rating. But as we know, anything that gets 100% plus is, for films that I absolutely adore, and I'm obsessed with. Even ones that don't get that. So the fact that this is in my top 150, of course, it's one of my favourite films, no doubt. And yes, it gets a very, very high rating of 100% plus, tier 2, and as I say, it doesn't have to be, tier S, my highest rating, or or even a tier one, to be, you know, a film that is just absolutely mind blowing, a film that I truly, truly love, you know, and obsessed with, and just means, you know, so much to me in terms of, you know, cinema, you know, enjoyment, immersion, how to make a film, you know, and stuff. And you know, I think just in terms of how entertaining it is, you know, of course, just because it doesn't get, you know, my highest rating stuff, you know, I do agree it's one of the best films ever made. I wouldn't personally put it in my top 50 or, you know, top 10 or anything, but that's just simply because there are films that mean more to me, even more so. And I think, yeah, you know, a lot of the time it's compared to Close Encounters, you know, but most people say Jaws, you know, is better. But personally, everyone, I do actually prefer, of course, as I've said before, Close Encounters. I think it does mean more to me, a bit more. It is more emotional, that film. It's more magical. I think it is, for the record, a better film. Not a popular opinion, but my opinion. And I think it just in terms of, you know, the themes in that film and how powerful that film is, you know, and how even more immersive that film is. You know, I think that is for me the final film, the one that is in the tier one, as I've said in my review for that. But this is not far behind. You know, it is really, really high, even in my top 150. You know, as I say, very close to my top 100. But I have to draw the line. I can't quite let it into the tier ones, because I do think, you know, Close Encounters is a bit of a leap above this. But you know, this film, regardless of it not being in my top 5 Spielbergs, I do think it's, you know, one of his top 10, of course, and I do think it's one of the best films ever made. You know, it's just a case. You know, this director is, you know, he's topped himself so many times. There's so many films that I love even more than this, which is just a testament, you know, it really is to how great he is. You know, he is my second favourite director, and I do prefer films like Indiana Jones, you know, or Raiders and Last Crusade, but you know, and E.T. and stuff, and you know, Schindler's List. But you know, this film, it certainly is, you know, among my favourite Spielbergs, or at least, you know, one of his absolute masterpieces. It truly, truly is. It's cinema, it really is. But you know, I think just Spielberg has done a few films, you know, quite a few that I do prefer even more than this. And yeah, in itself, the perfect horror film. You know, it's just one of the top 5 really for me in cinema. It's just one of the best thrillers. The themes of obsession, paranoia, you know, in every single sense. I think it's all here. You know, it's very Hitchcockian, but it feels like a Spielberg. This particular kind of magic feeling. You know, this just is. It's one of the best films ever made. You know, in the way it presents fear, the way it just immerses you in that picture through every technique. The dolly zoom, one of the most epic moments in cinema. The way he edits the film, you know, in every sense, it's got so much of a flow to the film. It's just, you know, the way he edits to suggest that is something that's truly genius about the film. And you know, all the effects, the production is stunning. You know, when the shark does eventually show up, it does not, for me anyway, you know, personally disappoint. And you just have brutal deaths. You know, this is, you know, very gory in the end. In particular, you know, with the death of Quint, for example. Wow, you know, that's such a horrible scene. I always get very sad, but you know, very shocked and kind of this visceral feeling, almost sickening feeling. Actually, you know, that's a brutal death. Actually, you know, I of course I can watch violent films and stuff, but surprisingly, you know, not much people talk about this death in particular. I think it's one of the most, you know, kind of brutal and realistic deaths in a film. It always scared me as a kid. This death, you know, just where the blood spurts out his mouth and the way it's just hanging on to him. You know, prolonged kind of the screaming, everything. You know, I don't need to explain more, but you know, that always gets me. You know, it's got the brutality, the visceral feel of this film. It really is. You know, even in the edits early on, when you've got people running about, you know, and stuff, and you know, you're not quite sure where the shark is and stuff, and who's gonna get, you know, kind of who's gonna be the next victim, and you're getting in the mindset of our main protagonist, Brody, and I love his character. It's a genius way to employ these ideas and how to get behind this character. You've got everything here: the initial build up, the questioning, of course, of our main kind of, as in many ways, it's a MacGuffin, this shark, but you know, it's just the way, you know, the classic kind of ingredients for the question of something, and then when it does, kind of people do kind of believe in it. You know, it's just more kind of believable in the way they believe, kind of thing. And it's just how you make a film. You know, classic Spielberg here, and certainly not denying this is a masterpiece. Not in my quite in my top five Spielbergs, but one of his very finest works, and one of the very finest films in cinema. It means so much to me, and so many times I've seen this film. Not quite in my top 100, but very close. And of course, there's so many films that just mean a bit more to me. You know, they're in my top 100. But wow, you know, this film is certainly among my favourites. You know, it really is one of the greatest films ever made. And yes, tell me your thoughts in the comments. And of course, more Spielberg reviews to come. And you know, I think, you know, there's maybe just from what I've seen at least so far, a few masterpieces left for me to review. But again, I've not seen all of his works. I've not seen Minority Report, The Colour Purple. Believe it or not, I've come close to these ones at times. I've not seen Munich, you know, and stuff. But from what I've seen, there's only a few masterpieces left to review, which is it's kind of sad. But you know, already there's been loads. So yes, you know, this is certainly one of them, and yes, just an absolute masterpiece in every sense. This is iconic, and this is genius filmmaking. One of the most immersive, enjoyable, purely enjoyable films. One that I guess even, you know, the critics can't deny is a great film. And yes, just a one that I look forward to watching again in the future. Of course, I try to watch this, you know, at least every year or so, really. And as I say, you know, to watch it in the summer, it's just a bit more special, of course. So yes, as always, more to come on Spielberg, and thanks for watching my review.